could not get close to the other side. Marion sharpshooters kept him down. At that point, Watson sent his lieutenant out to draw his sword and lead a charge, bayonet charge across the river.
These rifles were accurate at 300 yards. We've got documentation where Malaysia.
We're here this morning at Robert Cooper Leadership Center. Most people around the area call it Camp Bob Cooper. We're right on the shore of Lake Marion. We're a half a mile from where General Francis Marion met Lieutenant Colonel Watson for the Battle of Waibu Swamp, which was the start of the Bridges campaign that ran on for 3 weeks. What we're doing here is we've got a group of third graders, virtually all the third graders from Clarendon County and from one school over in Williamsburg County out here, along with a couple of classes of sixth graders, to talk to them about what was going on, how people lived 230 years ago during the time of the American Revolution. Here, Camp Bob Cooper feeds the students lunch. As you can see, it's a great field to work on, and we've got nature trails tomorrow night, Friday night. We'll be doing a lantern walk about a half a mile long through the woods back there, and we'll have 7 different venues set up with different reenactors, from one with a stockade with the British prisoners. We'll have some of the Hessian soldiers back there guarding a spot. We'll have a wounded soldier, and one of Marion's camps, the Jack's Creek Militia, will be set up, and people can go by and just listen to what those folks are talking about for 5 minutes at a station. We've got 24 stations set up on the field, and just beside us here, you'll see it later probably, a storyteller talking about the life and the type of things that people did in their homes. Across over here we have a little bit unrealistic, since historically we don't know that Benjamin Franklin ever really toured South Carolina. We know he did own a printing shop in Charleston, but we have Benjamin Franklin talking about some of his experiments and some of his life experiences. We have several members of the Hessian regiment here, because the Hessians were really mercenaries hired by the British to fight for them during the Revolution. The part that the Hessians played in this area was down on the other side of what is now Lake Marion, where the Santee River was Nelson's Ferry. And the Hessians were quite often found guarding the ferry. So we have 5 of the members of the Hessian reenacting regiment here with us, and they're demonstrating various things. One of them is part Native American, and so he is talking about the part the Native Americans, the Indians, played in the American Revolution. We also have a couple of cannons. We have a rifleman. We have a new item this year is indigo dyeing, and dyeing with all the natural things like using the berries and even onions to get fabric colored. And so that's an interesting display. We have the marching and drill that we've had before. We have this year, for the first time, we've been able to get blacksmiths to come down. So we have 2 blacksmiths here showing what they did back then to make things for people to live with. We have the crime and punishment, and we have a pillory and the stocks for where they put the people in when they were not doing the right kind of thing. And one of the ladies has a G on because they branded people if they were gossips or things like that. So she has a red G on because to show them what a gossip would have been identified as. We also have points and spear points and arrow points and so forth like that, pots that folks have gathered up in the Lake Marion area over the past 40 or 50 years. We have a quill writing where they actually take the feathers that have been made into quill pens and they practice writing with that. So, and we have one of the very popular things with the 3rd graders is throwing the tomahawk. So we have a guy that's actually competed competitively nationally throwing knives and tomahawks, demonstrating and letting the kids actually throw the tomahawk to learn how to do that.
Yes, it's all based on revolutions of the hawks. It's going to spin from where I'm letting the guys throw it. It's going to return 1 full revolution and stick. So if they're too far back, it's going to hit like this. If they're too far forward, it's going to hit like this. And if they don't follow through correctly, it's going to just go and it's not going to do anything but reflect off the target. So I'll try and see how lucky I am at this point. See, they do that all the time.
Believe it or not, we have found out that girls are much more proficient, quicker at throwing tomahawks, so boys, watch out.
My booth is about the Battle of Terracotta Swamp. Francis Marion defeated the British at Terracotta in that battle, and we do a little close order drill, and we instruct the children on the different aspects of pioneer life. As you can see by the campfire and that, we've got the cooking fire and birds and a little thing there where we rotate. We're simulated roasting a critter and making a stew, how it used to be in the days when Francis Marion was here.
Well, we think it's just important that the students don't see us walking around with a styrofoam coffee cup when we're in our history clothes, and we try to keep the history clothes. You can go overboard where everything has to be handmade. We aren't that into it.
You know, you can't stop at Subway and buy a sandwich. You have to make everything for yourself.
But 230 years ago, this was a colonial, or this was the outback, the frontier of South Carolina. So people were more dressed like I am, and they're pretty rough type wearing apparel, and that's what we're trying to depict here is what people would have been, how they would have been attired in this area. When we first started the program, our first thing was what grade are the kids first introduced to South Carolina history, and that turned out to be 3rd grade. So we thought, well, that's a little bit early, but recalling X number of years ago when we were that age, you can still remember a lot of things that were neat that you learned at that point. And I think it's a very impressionable age. And if we can imprint a little bit of this history and the importance of Francis Marion and the people in this area and how important the battles were that were fought here and how important South Carolina was and this was where the importance for the American Revolution was, because when Marion was able to break the supply line from Georgetown and Charleston to Camden, and Camden was really the only thing they had in the center of South Carolina. When he was able to break those 2 supply lines, that basically doomed the British to controlling South Carolina right there. And people don't understand that. They don't understand that there were more battles fought in South Carolina than in the other 12 colonies combined. They don't understand the loss of life here, both by those that were loyal to the king and the patriots themselves. So we think if we can try to make that. At each station, we have a story to tell that relates to the American Revolution. So not only are the demonstrators or the interpreters talking about their particular skill, they're also talking about a particular battle. For instance, the Battle of Waibu Swamp, or the siege at Fort Watson, or over at Fort Mott and Nelson's Ferry, etc. So we've got 12 different stories here, because as the students go through, we've got 2 loops. As I said earlier, there's 24 stations. A given student will go through half of them in a day. And where we can, like with the 2 blacksmiths, we try to mirror the stations so that they are exposed to, both groups are exposed to the same thing.
I believe that the main goal here is to educate the children, to expose them to how the life really was years ago. And this gives them an opportunity to experience, not only with hands-on, but also to really see the culture and what their forefathers went through.
Children don't appear to know as much history, and particularly the history that's close by and right around them. Sometimes, for instance, I'm talking about Tearcoat Swamp, and a lot of children, I find, about 50% of them today, didn't know much about the Black River nor the Tearcoat Swamp.
And we come out to show them what their ancestors did back in the old days. And it's just something to see a kid, a child, that his face just lights up with the knowledge on it, that he's learned something, that how it used to be.
The goal of the event, to me, is to educate the youth in Clarendon County and in the neighboring county here concerning the Francis Marion, the heritage here in this area, but to give them some exposure from outside the classroom, which is a great benefit teaching experience for the guys, to get them out to help them learn. And to me, it's just to see the excitement and the education that they get from doing something like this, the experience that they normally would not.
Everybody out here is a volunteer. No one is getting any pay at all. It's costing everybody because we have to buy our own clothes, and all of the equipment that you see here has been purchased by individuals to bring out here and work with. So, and the field lends itself to 24 stations. The 24 stations sort of lend themselves to about 300 students a day as a max. So, but any school, any teacher that wants to bring her students here, if she'll get a hold of us, early on in the planning, so that we can see how, and put them on a first come, first serve kind of waiting list. If there is somebody drops out, we'll be glad to work them in. And this year we're very fortunate. There is a charge. It runs out to be $10 a student is what we pay Camp Bob Cooper for the meals, and with that then comes the use of their facilities. And we think that's a good deal for everybody. It helps them out when they have a time when they're rowers and they aren't real busy, and it really helps us out. But this year, the Manning Rotary Club, in association with the Somerton Rotary Club, got a matching grant for us. And then the Ruriton Club from Turbyville helped us out, and then we had several independent individuals donate with us. So it isn't costing the kids any of the schools anything. All it costs the schools is the cost of running a bus down here for the day. So we were really pleased that we were able to do that.